and we have a gentleman calling in right now that I'm going to suggest probably doesn't see it that way.
Morning, guys. It's Mike Johnson from the Mission.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hey, well, I'm doing fine, but there are a whole lot of vulnerable people that are going to not be doing quite as fine.
Yeah.
Now that the instruments of their enslavement have been made legal.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
And that is, I think, the correct metaphor. The nature of these things is that they are just destructive and addictive, and they do not represent something that we should think of as an alternative lifestyle. There's virtually nobody that we see that is stuck in street homelessness that doesn't have an active, debilitating substance use disorder that is impairing their ability to get back on their feet. And without conquering, they will never get back on their feet.
Yeah.
And that's the very large supermajority of folks we see on the street.
You know, I was watching your video on Facebook yesterday, and you were talking about you were talking about how some people that are living in the tents now have the option of getting involved in your drug-free program and moving up to a nicer apartment, but you're saying a lot of people are just like, no, we don't need to do that, right? I mean, it's just amazing.
Well, I don't understand it, and I think that there are a couple of ways in which a couple of good examples in which we seem to be confusing as a society the roles of the judiciary and the legislature, and it feels like the judiciary has taken upon itself sort of the mantle of sort of moral determination, and the questions they should be asking is not, is it good or even is it moral, but is it legal and is it constitutional? And they're not supposed to be calling plays, just the balls and strikes. And whenever they sort of take that stuff on, then they end up putting themselves into this weird conflict with society in general, where most people don't want the legalization of heroin. Or the possession of heroin, and yet we've now just been told by these folks that we sort of have to have it, and it's just ironic, given all the language that we've heard over the last several years about the assaults on our democracy.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike. If the Supreme Court makes this kind of ruling, and it's based on the fact that the defense that was built in 1981, according to Joe Brusick, when they had a chance to rework this, they put in this unknowing that I was in possession as a legitimate defense, but that apparently doesn't go far enough. So why wouldn't the legislature immediately go, yoicks, this is not what we had in mind, let's rewrite that law so that it complies with what the Supreme Court says our guidance should be? And the answer is, because of the liberal nature of the legislature, they're probably just fine with this. And what does that say about our state and our society?
Well, I think what it says is that at least I'm about to sound partisan, and I really, as the leader of the mission, I really try to avoid that. But there's a couple of political philosophies that are in conflict in America, and one of them is that we need that there are people that can't take care of themselves and can't succeed, and they need to be taken care of. They need rescuers. They're victims of various things, and they need rescuers. And when that's your sort of view of government, then when you look at someone who has an active substance use disorder like this, you don't necessarily see the way in which the criminal justice system can actually be the thing that saves them. And I can't tell you how many people I've heard say to me, that they knew in the depth of their addiction the only way they were going to get clean was to get arrested and taken to jail. So that if they didn't get arrested and taken to jail, they were going to die. I've heard those words in virtually that form hundreds of times, and so it's just when you're sort of looking at folks and you're like, oh, these poor folks, it's not their fault. We shouldn't be punishing them. You're not punishing them. You're actually saving them by saying to somebody, no, you can't do that. When you don't let your children run with scissors, you're not being mean. You're being kind.
That is an excellent point. What are you suggesting here?
Well, what I'm suggesting is that I think it's weird that if the legal basis of this is something that has been in our laws for 29 years, that we just now are discovering it? Like, oh my, 29 years ago someone wrote this thing, and now one person has noticed it since then. Just like with statistics, the law, when tortured, will confess to anything.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Right.
Well, we've got
That's
the
right.
climate. We've got the Seattle City Council saying anything goes,
Yeah.
including CHOP. We've got shoot up places. We've got
that's right.
needle exchanges.
That's right.
We've got Oregon
Yeah.
saying full speed ahead. So
Right.
Yeah. So that's what this is that Seattle politics becomes Washington politics, and then places that aren't Seattle are just sort of further disenfranchised in at least a practical sense, right? Like, now we get further and further. It's as if the Seattle City Council takes over more and more land until eventually the Seattle. What do we need anything but the Seattle City Council for? We might as well just sort of save a bunch of money and cut out a whole layer of government. It'd be so much more efficient.
Yep.
good points, Mike. And enslavement to their addictions that will ultimately bring them down. That is just the way that it truly is. And now we've legitimized that. So
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, and that's, I think that was the great point of Eric Johnson's Seattle is Dying, where he said, this isn't compassion, this is apathy. This isn't being nice to people. This is what not caring about what happens to people looks like. And so I think that we all are appropriate to feel the challenge of those words, that this is not compassion, this is apathy. It is not mean to say to your children you can't run with scissors. It's kind. It's not mean to say to someone who's destroying themselves with a deeply addictive illegal substance, oh, it's okay. That is not kind. That is not compassionate. To say to them, we are going to get you the help you need. We have the help you need, and we're actually going to require you to get the help that you need, because it's not okay with us to just watch you kill yourself slowly as long as you don't make too much fuss along the way. As long as you keep the fuss to an acceptable level, no. That's and so this stuff just. As soon as I'm so glad you brought this up, because I am on fire, because these are the folks that we see every day, and if they can get clean and sober, they are amazing, wonderful, courageous, heroic people who have battled through things, climbed mountains higher than any mountain I've ever climbed, if you get what I mean.
Yep.
And I'm privileged to have them as friends. And this decision is going to condemn people to death that deserve to live and deserve better than what we're giving them with this. Makes me so angry.
Oh, so very well said, Mike Johnson. Thank you for your time this morning.
Well, thank you for giving me the time to rant. What good is talk radio if there isn't at least a little opportunity to rant every now and then?
You got it, especially in such an important subject as this.